A good source of rods and things for making whirligigs are these like racks. This is a rack out of a shop fitting that was going to be thrown away, and I thought, well, you know, that'll come in handy for something. Now, at first thought they don't look brilliant because they're sort of spot welded at these particular joints, but you can cope with that. All you need to do is get a pair of, the quickest way with bolt cutters. If you don't have any bolt cutters, you can use an angle grinder or even a hacksaw, but all I do, I just get these bolt cutters. These are cheaply obtainable. There's some different size rods. I'm just going to show you how to cut a few out. That one. Now you have to plan ahead to see what you want, and I want to keep that piece there, that nice long piece, so I'm going to have to cut these off here. And I'll just cut this one out and show you how I remove it so that bit doesn't matter. If you leave a little bit showing, like a quarter of an inch or so on each end of the rod like this, I'm just going to cut this right out. There we go. Now we're left with a rod there with these pieces that are spot welded onto it, and the idea is you've got to get those off. Now if you try twisting them like that with pliers or something to break the weld, you'll end up bending the metal, the piece you want. So what I'll do, I'll show you how I can get rid of those. I'll just move this out the way. Ways you can do it. Probably the best way is get your long piece of metal that you're trying to salvage and just pop it into a metalworking vise. A metalworking vise is best, but I suppose any vise will do. What you're trying to do is keep this straight without bending it. So, and you want to get this piece off so it's just spot welded on. There's several ways you can do it. If you put that in there, that maintains the straightness of the rod, so it wouldn't spoil putting any bends in it. You can just get a pair of pliers like this and put that around on your fingers and rock it from side to side to break it off. Or you could have some mole grips, they'll do the same thing, they'll clamp on and rock it. Or you could just use an adjustable spanner like this and just put it over and then just move the spanner from side to side, just waggle it about like that, and eventually you'll end up like that, and it's taken the piece off and left it fairly intact. You could do it this way. I have done it this way sometimes, where you put the piece you're breaking off in and then just carefully rock this from side to side, but sometimes you might bend the rod and you really want to keep that as straight as you can, so this is probably the best way. Now another useful source of rods for whirligigs are this. This is just an old shelf out of a cooker. Somebody was scrapping, I think it was my wife's cooker actually, we were getting a new cooker, and rather than take this to scrap, I salvaged these because they look some fairly decent rods. And again, you can use an angle grinder or a hacksaw, or if you've got some big bolt croppers like this, just crop it off, and there you have quite a decent strong piece of rod there for absolutely free. I mean, why go and buy stuff when you can get it for nothing? One good tip, by the way, if you've got anything like this that's covered in rust and you want to get the rust off, if you soak it in ordinary vinegar, and I mean ordinary vinegar, you don't need fancy stuff, just the vinegar you buy at Sainsbury's or whatever supermarket you go to that you put on your chips, if you soak it in vinegar, you'll find when you take it out of the vinegar it will still look the same. If you get a bit of cloth or something, a bit of steel wool or whatever, or scouring pad, that's the word I was thinking of, scouring pad, run over it, you'll be amazed that all that rust comes off and it'll leave it lovely and shiny like brand new metal. And that's just vinegar. I use vinegar all the time for cleaning parts. You can even put nuts and bolts and things in it and it'll clean it up lovely, and they'll come up as clean as new. So here's a little piece that was spot welded onto another rack for a barbecue. There's a ready-made cam there for a whirligig. For example, this is the same piece. I've just popped one end in the vise. I've chopped the end off, and by cutting this end and bending this off, you've got a cam which is already there. You can use on a whirligig for your actuating rod, so that even that simple bend can be used. And then you've got this is another barbecue piece that was thrown away. You can see it was spot welded there. I've cut them off. And again, there's a ready-made piece here for a cam. All you got to do is pop it in the vise, bend this straight, and then you can end up with this is already a cam, which you can cut the end off, whichever end you want, to length, and there's another little cam that you can use to operate a whirligig with. And again, it's all free stuff, and it's quite simple. It's already practically bent for the job. My box of axles and things for whirligigs, it's in a purpose-built box, look, specially made out of some junk hardboard. It's even got a little label on the front which says axle rods for whirligigs, etc. And all I do when I take something apart, axle rods or anything I think might be useful, I just cut them out or take them up and stick them in this box, and you end up with a assortment of all different sizes that may come in useful at some point. For example, this is a piece of rod, quite a long piece of rod, which was out of an old fire guard, and I have actually used these in whirligigs because they're quite easy to bend if you want to make a cam type rod that drives various motions. You can easily bend this, whereas the thicker ones that I normally use are difficult to make more than one bend in, so that's useful. There's all various parts. This is actually out of an old bed, that is, but I think it's a bit springy, so you have to be a bit careful with that. I don't think it'll bend very well. It's brittle but springy. And I've got rods. This one's out of a printer, an old printer that I took apart. It's good quality steel, and it looks like it's stainless, so it won't go rusty. And you know, when I take things apart, I'm thinking, now, is that going to be any use? What's the use for it? And immediately I think, I've got an idea for that. And for example, at the top of this rod, there's a little pin, what they call a transax pin, which goes through a hole in the rod. And now, immediately there's a possibility for a whirligig that you could bash that down into a wooden post with this piece sticking out, and then you could bore a hole in your whirligig, as I've explained in my other videos, and pop the whirligig on there, and then with some washers and using this pin in the top, or if you don't want a pin, you can put a little cotter pin in through there. That'll keep the whirligig in place. So already, apart from using it as a rod for something else, I can see a use for that. So in the box it goes. These are, funny enough, are got little eyelets on the end, and they look quite useful. I saw that, I thought, that'll do for something, especially with the eyelets already. The rod's been flattened out, and what they are actually is out of an old umbrella. Daughter was throwing an old umbrella away, and I thought I'll have a quick look, see if there's anything worthwhile. And all these were, you know, what they have in the umbrella with a little joint, and I thought, I'll have them. So of course I grabbed a few and cut them out and chucked them in my box for future use. And that's what you got to do if you're a scrimper. Why throw it away? You know, it doesn't take up much space. And I mean, let's face it, if you went into a model shop or something, or anywhere to buy metal, you'd have to pay money for it. This is all free. But do try and keep it orderly. You know, I've got a little shed, my scrimper shed, where I keep all this stuff in, and it's all labelled and put away so that if I want something, I can find it easily. You don't want to just junk it in the corner in a big box and then you've got to sort through every time. If I want an axle rod or any sort of rod, I know where they are and I can just go and get one straight away. So, you know, it is worth it. I've got these, look, these are nice chrome pieces. I don't know what they are off of. They were welded onto something. I can't even remember where I got them from now, but they look quite decent and they're nice chrome plated. So I thought, well, they're too nice to throw away. So in the box they go. Trouble is, you tend to get too much stuff. You really need to sort it out every so often. But people always say to me, what have you got all that junk for, when they see my shed? And I always say, well, it's not junk. There's no such thing as junk, really. Junk, what you describe as junk, is really stuff that's in the hands of the wrong people. Because it might be junk and rubbish to one lot of people, but to other people, it's useful and you can make a use with it. And all this stuff, I think, is useful. And at the end of the day, can easily throw it away if I want to anyway, but I often delve in here for something, to mend something around the house or whatever. Anyway, there we go, I've jabbered on enough. Bye!